I've learned a lot from John Patterson, who's on the call, about greeting people from different parts of the world. So if you're in my part of the world, so in Australia and New Zealand, good morning. And if you're in Asia, it's very early in the morning, and there's a couple of people who are doing that. I really appreciate their heroic efforts. But if you're in the US or Europe, it's afternoon and evening. In fact, even some parts of Europe, it's very late in the evening, and a couple of people doing that, we really appreciate it. The support from people has really been so great. I should say today's session is being recorded so that we can show it to people who couldn't make it today. And maybe even for you, there'll be highlights. That there's been so much gold here today, Dean, isn't there, that people will be wanting to replay it. So I'm Brian Donovan. I'm your co-host for this morning. I'm also the co-author of the new book called The Gentle Art of Leadership. And with me is my co-host and co-author, Dean Phelan. Dean, do you want to say hello?
Hello, and yeah, welcome everyone, and just echoing what Brian has said, and thank you for making the time. Just coming to grips with what that means all around the globe, really, people linking in. So really appreciate it.
It's really great. And yeah, thanks, Dean. We'll talk a little bit more about the book and what brings us together. But Zoom's great, isn't it? That we can find a time slot that works for most people and get so many people involved on the call, and really want to welcome you and add my welcome to Dean's. You might be in a few different categories of people today. There's some people who we interviewed for the book, and you've been featured, and it's great to put a face to the name. So as much as anything, those people that we interviewed will be interested to see and hear from each other. So really welcome you as a particular group, and really appreciate your support. It's been fantastic through the whole process, and even more so today. There's probably another group of people I should mention, which is our family and our friends. Dean's wife, Lisa's here, and Jeanette's here. I'm sorry, Jeanette, mixing up you and Dean's sister. And Ruth Rosario's here, my wife, and lots of friends and supporters and former clients and colleagues. So we really appreciate that group of people. And there might be a third group of people, which is you've just heard something about this book, and maybe you've heard us raving about it in social media and other people talking about it. You're curious and want to know more. Anyhow, welcome to all of those three groups of people, and we hope you'll enjoy and get what you want out of today's session. How it's going to go today, just to let you know, is Dean and I are going to give you a very brief overview of the book and what's behind it, and why we think it'd be a good idea to read the book, buy the book, even better. But then we want to hear from as many as we can of the 50 plus leaders I talked about, many of whom are on the call today, about why they think the book is a valuable read and what's in it that you might enjoy. So our overview is going to be pretty brief, and we're also going to ask all those people who do have something to say about the book and why you should read it to also be brief. If I could have your permission, we'll probably ring the bell at the 2-minute mark. And Dean, you've got a bell ready to...
Yeah, I got a glass and a pair of scissors. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just so that we can get as many people as we can to make a comment. And we'll leave it to you what you want to say, but we'll also have time after we speak to as many of the interviewees as we can for general questions and comments. Please, though, go and put them in the chat as we're going, and when it comes time, we'll get to as many of them as we can. We've let everybody know the call's for 45 minutes, so whatever time you've got, 45 minutes past that. Dean and I can probably stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes beyond that if there are people with real concerns or questions. Peter Watson, I see you raising your hand. Are you okay if I come to you once we've given a bit of background? Can't hear you, Pete, because you're on mute. You're still. I'll press on, Peter, and come back to you once we've given a little bit about the book. Let me just share my screen and show you in all its glory. So there's the book in all its glory. You should say thanks to Lisa Phelan, Dean's sister, who did the design, Lisa Phelan design. We're getting lots of fabulous feedback about that, Lisa. Somebody called it a handsome book. I don't think they were referring to the blokes on the back cover, but front cover mainly. And I also want to thank, I think Sylvie Blair might also be on the call. We want to thank her, she's from BookPod, who helped us publish the book. So maybe just a little bit from Dean and myself about why the book. Maybe if you could just think about it for a moment, who's a leader who's had a big influence in your life? You know, if you're like me, there's been people who've believed in you and trusted you, maybe given you an opportunity when you perhaps didn't believe in yourself as much. They cared about you and connected with you. And that's really the point of the book, that leaders that treat people well like that, with dignity and respect, they're the ones that get the best results. And in our view, they're the ones that are practicing this gentle art of leadership. And the research and data really supports us. And I'm going to hand over to Dean, who I introduced before. For anyone who's come on late on the call, Dean's my co-author and really helped us a lot with the research. And maybe, Dean, if I hand over to you, could you just give us a bit of an outline of the background of the book?
Yeah, well, as you got on the slide there, over a decade of work, we conducted more than 6,000 360-degree feedback reports. And what we did was analyze all of those feedback reports to determine what were the factors that differentiated between people rating their boss, if you like, as being effective or not effective. And a number of factors came out of that. And then we conducted more than 50 one-on-one interviews with leaders from around the globe. And as Brian said, a number of you are on the line, and thank you very much for that input and for your support. We've also reflected on hundreds of executive coaching sessions, our own experience as executive CEOs over the years. And finally, we read and reviewed more than 160 books and research articles on leadership as they pertain to the themes that were emerging from our research. And it was out of all of that we put it together, the research base that fed into the book. Yeah. Lots more I could say about that, but that's it in a nutshell, Brian. Yeah.
Really good, Dan. Thank you. So that really, perhaps just to summarise why we think you'd want to read the book, is that we're challenging that common perception that you've got to be that noisy, charismatic, forceful leader that we've all experienced. There's certainly some leaders around like that. And I'm not saying they don't get results, they do, but we think the ones who get better results are the ones that have got, you know, there's that word humility in there. Just a bit of that was a key thing that came out in talking to most people on the interviews that we did. Most of them would say, oh, look, it's not me, it's my team. But of course, they were pretty smart to get a great team around them. But really what they're good at is bringing out the best in others. And they do that through treating them well. So really in the book, we've unpacked that to a great extent. But rather than Dean and I, of course, we would tell you why read the book, and it's a great idea. But rather than do that, let me stop sharing and I'll ask any of our interviewees what they think about why read the book. With that caveat that I mentioned earlier, we'll need to keep all the comments down to about under 2 minutes if you can. That's a big challenge, but you're all up for a challenge. Now, Peter Watson, so like Peter Watson's doing, got his digital hand up. If you are one of the interviewees and you'd like to offer something about why I read the book, just raise your digital hand like that. And Peter, can I call on you first? You
Yes.
happy to go?
Yeah, by all means, Brian. Look, thanks very much for the opportunity. I've known you for almost 30 years, I would have thought. And the book by Brian and Dean was always going to be written because the gentle art of leadership, well, there's not a lot spoken about it. And, I believe that there was a distinct gap. It could have easily been entitled, because I'm doing work with Gen Z at the moment, getting the best out of Gen Z people, because I'm not sure that the principles of leadership have changed, but certainly there is mounting evidence that greater emphasis is required if you're going to get the best out of a younger workforce. As has been said in this book, positive and constructive relationships will drive strong performance and results. I think Adam Bennett made that comment. I read a recent article on the 13th of November in the AFR, and that article was talking about Gen Z people in particular. And leaders could also get much more out of Gen Z if they recognise that younger workers wanted their employers to treat them as individuals with unique interests, strengths and ambitions. I think this talks very, very directly to the book, The Gentle Art of Leadership. My experience is that they still tend to be the most engaged, motivated and driven segment of the company's workforce. I'm currently chairman of an organisation with 700 people, and the demography of that, more than half of them are Gen Z people. This book unlocks good thinking and structure to engage with the workforce, and I commend the book to you because I think it really does go to the heart of driving performance in organisations. So, Brian, thanks very much. And Dean, thanks very much for the wonderful work that you've done. I really do appreciate it. And it's a book I'm sure that I will get an opportunity to distribute widely throughout our organisation. So thanks very much.
Right, Peter, thank you. I should have said at the outset, and you're in Queensland in Australia. And,
I am Brian, and I'm sorry about the early technology issues, but I had to ditch the computer and go onto my phone. So anyway, we got there.
Thanks for your kind comments. Let's go next to Elsa Mallock. And Elsa, would you mind just introducing yourself and where you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Elsa Malik. I'm based in Chicago, and I chair a human behavior consulting firm. First of all, I want to take the time to recognize just the amount of effort that Brian and Dean put into this book. I mostly operate in that research phase, and I know how daunting those 50 plus interviews and those thousands of data points that you have to kind of go through and scrub to get to a synthesized, thoughtful process and one that people can follow and understand. And I do want to talk about one of the things that I'm noticing, and it didn't really hit me until you put up the cover. It's very much building blocks. You hear about the other stories of other leaders that are in this like Dr. King or Mark Chullis around some elements to it. And we all kind of speak very similar languages. We just take it in a very different approach, which tells you that there's, a common denominator around the patterns that we've all developed. And transparently, it's been kind of interesting to steal some of your ideas around. I didn't think of that one, so I'm going to put it in my pocket in my repertoire of elements. So it does give you some really good tangible opportunities to say, I'm going to try that because I think that fits where I'm going. But just a phenomenal job on making it easy enough to understand, but also quick enough to kind of take into application as well.
That's great, Elsa. Thanks so much. And you're running a book club too, and we're going to talk a bit more about that, reaching your audience with that. It's going to be a fantastic opportunity.
Yep.
Let's go to Peter McMullen. Peter, do you mind introducing yourself and say where you are?
Sure, Brian. Look, I'm in Melbourne, but I am Vice Chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, World Chambers Federation, which is an agglomeration of chambers of commerce around the world. And have been very impressed with your book, Brian and Dean. It's a great read, and I think I'm going to find a way of getting it to all our member chambers throughout the world, because I think it actually gives a framework for discussion about these issues. And no more important time than now to be addressing questions of leadership. I mean, I have never seen a period of greater geopolitical tension, and the opportunity to collaborate and to cooperate, every opportunity to do so should be grabbed, in my opinion. But look, you asked earlier what influences, individuals, and I want to answer that in two ways: one with an individual, and two in a collective sense. One was the former master of Ormond College when I was a student at Melbourne University, Davis McCackey, who went on to become the governor of Victoria, was a practitioner of the gentle art of leadership, and I think I learned a great deal from him in those days. But more actively in more recent years, Cranlana, which is a leadership program run by I think the Maya Foundation in some form or other, had a week-long symposium focused on the work of Ursula Le Guin, who's a science fiction writer who wrote a magnificent short piece, which I recommend to everybody on the call, called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And I think you can't read that. And I say read it several times. It's only 7 pages long, but it's apocryphal, and it's actually quite powerful. And it really transformed the approach that I've taken to joining business with philanthropy. And that's what I do in my day, everywhere in the world. So I'm encouraged by this book, and fantastic work, Brian and Dean, and I hope it sells well.
That's a great wish. Thanks, Peter. And great to find you in Melbourne. Peter's normally some other part of the world, so great to see you in Melbourne. Let's go to Vish. Vish, do you mind introducing yourself and where you are?
Thanks, Brian. My name is Vish Padmanabhan, and currently based in Adelaide, and I work for a company called Go Zero, which is looking to electrify all our buses here in Australia, which is a very exciting project. Brian and Dean, firstly, a great book, very easy to read. It's a great handbook. I really do appreciate the empirical evidence that you've built into the book with a number of longitudinal studies, which is really second to none. Brian, you and I have known each other for many, many years, and the story that I like to give is on day one, when I joined Telstra back in 2004, a gentleman walks into the boardroom and comes straight up to me and he says, "Vish, I'd like you to welcome you to Telstra. My name is Ziggy Switkowski," who was a CEO. And in my time with Ziggy, the recurring theme is always there, and that's humility and his willingness to embrace new ideas and new people and to challenge the norm. So that was a really lasting impression on my early career at Telstra. But just moving on, I've had the chance to work in different geographies and with different industries. But the continuous thing is, my observation is the real leaders are the ones that are worried about the outcomes at a company level, at a business level, and indeed projecting people that will continue a legacy way past the individual. And when I read the book, I see that. When I see some of the people on this call, very, very impressive individuals, I see the same thing. And I've had the chance to work with and interact with some of the people on this call, and it's really very refreshing and very good. And I think an earlier speaker talked about the challenges that we're faced with geopolitically at country levels, at business levels. And I think the need of the day is really reflected in the messages of the book. And if I were to summarize, it's a learning mindset, surrounding yourselves with people that are smarter than yourself, which is a key thing. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, it's about performance and outcomes. So Brian, Dean, thank you very much. I am indeed going to buy the book and circulate it. I've mentioned it to my board here at Go Zero in Sydney just last week, Brian, and I'm very keen to buy it for members of my family who are in various industries across different sectors as well. Thank you.
That's great, Vish. Love to hear that. It's increased sales is also a fantastic thing to be hearing. Thanks for your support, Vish. Jeff Spicer, do you mind introducing yourself, Jeff, and where you are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. I'm here in Melbourne. Currently work at Good Start Early Learning, which is the largest early childhood education and care service provider in Australia. But my work with Brian goes back over a decade across multiple roles at different organisations. And through that work and a theme in the book that always has struck me and I've centred on is the best leaders are the authentic leaders. Always reflect, what does authentic mean? So to me, it means leading in a way that is natural, that feels natural for you. And for me, that includes gentleness, humbleness, but also determination. It's not, extroverted, powerful, aggressive personality type. So understanding those key principles and tenets of leadership, which the book brings. So it does require certain principles and certain behaviors and certain actions, but applying them with your own personality is something that I've always found useful in working with Brian, but also in reading the book. And then so the fact that so many leaders and others have shared their stories really opens up for me the possibility that different types of people can lead successfully. It's not, you don't have to conform to a consensus view to lead successfully. And I think with that, it invites more people to step up and take leadership roles, which and to equip them with tools to do that successfully. So I think that's really important for us as a community and and more broadly, globally, as some of the previous speakers mentioned.
It's great, Jeff. Really appreciate your comments. Thanks. And I think just on what Jeff's saying also, that today's an opportunity for people to put a face to a name. For you reading the book and for a lot of the people who are interviewed in the book, we haven't met each other. So it's great to hear from so many of the people who are in the book today and put a face to the name. Speaking of a face and a name, John Patterson, do you mind introducing yourself, John, where you are?
Sure. I'll just say I'm very sick today, so pardon me. My voice is terrible. My name is John Patterson, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Influential You. Our company focuses on leadership training and a lot of the kinds of training and development that make peopling better in the workplace. There's a ton that I could say. I've led programs personally to over 100,000 people around the world in different industries and cultures and things like that. The thing that I think is so important about this book is that fundamentally, you and I, we often look towards people that we think have certain attributes we want for ourselves. Ooh, they're really courageous. Ooh, they're really powerful. Ooh, they're really this. Ooh, they're really that. And oftentimes we don't really understand what leadership is. I was just watching a program a moment ago. So much of what we learn about leadership is like watching superhero movies where there's somebody really powerful, somebody really strong, somebody that can really conquer, often somebody male, somebody that sort of cuts through the nonsense, all those kinds of things, as opposed to what I think is so important about this book, which is that there are so many other ways to lead. And in fact, I think it's kind of a fantasy that most of what we think of when we think of leadership is like that, powerful and authoritarian and so forth. Mostly true leadership, effective leadership, is exactly what's exemplified in the book. And so, like some others have said, I think it's very important that you identify for yourself by reading the book some of the different ways that you might apply things that you hadn't thought of yourself. I've loved reading through the book, and I'm going to steal all kinds of things that I hadn't heard of yet. And that's the great thing about being part of a community like this. So that's what I'll say, Brian.
Thanks so much, John. I should have declared my conflict of interest too. I've been studying with John's organisation the past couple of years, and there's some really great material coming out of that I think is correlated with the book, and look to tell you some more about that in future times. But really
Great,
appreciate
Brian.
your
Thank you.
If it's okay with you, I might dob a couple of people in who I know would be only too happy to say some things. We've still got a little bit of time to take a few more. Liam Fraser, can I dob you in? Would you be willing to say something?
You know, this new version of Zoom, Brian, I couldn't even find the where to raise the hand. So firstly, let me start by saying what a huge feat for yourself and Dean and your collaborators and other contributors to the book. Today marks a tremendous milestone for you both, for a passion project and a labour of love, I know, over many years. So by way of introduction, Liam Fraser in Los Angeles, of course, with the sun shining so brightly behind me, via Melbourne, which is where I met Brian some decade ago, was the beneficiary of Brian's coaching services, and formed a great bond and friendship ever since. And we regularly check in, and therefore I've loved watching the book come to life, but even more so grateful to have played such a small part in contributing to it. So I'm amongst some legends of Australian and global business here. So I feel my contribution to the art of leadership is going to be humbled by some of the experiences around here. But I clearly resonate with the title, gentle and art, because I think those two words really symbolize a lot of what have both guided some of the greatest leaders I've had, but also what develops my own leadership style, often portrayed as servant leadership and the like. So I support some of the earlier comments, I think, Peter, regarding the complex times with which we live. Can say living in the US through an election is probably as great an example of that, and the influence on that inside the workplace, and the impact that has on the teams that we lead, and therefore that role of empathy and support, as well as being focused on the outcomes that we're obviously here to focus on in the commerce and outcomes of business. So I forgot to say who I'm with, Build Exact, and on a journey to create another fabulous Australian software success story, founded in Melbourne some 12 years ago, and going gangbusters, as we like to say over here in the North American market. So again, congratulations, Brian and Dean. I wish you both nothing but success with the book, and look forward to doing my part in exposing it to my community as well.
Thanks so much, Liam. Great to hear from you. I was wondering, in terms of dobbing people in, I think I can rely on Fee Slavin. Would you be willing, Fee, to say something? And can I put Debbie Taylor-Moore on notice? I can't see you actually, Debbie, but I believe you're there. Love to hear from you as well.
I am here.
Okay, let's come to you. I'll go to Fee first. Is that okay, Fee?
Okay.
Fine. Thank you, Brian. And congratulations, Brian and Dean. I'm Fee Slavin. I'm a small contributor to the book, and I'm a partner at Weenbuck, Professional Accounting Services. Though I would note that I'm not an accountant. So I'm one of those extroverts that Brian and Dean have sort of identified. I thoroughly enjoyed participating in the book, and generally because it is something where you receive often more than you give, and having those conversations which I really enjoy doing in general. I just gathered things along the way, and for me, leadership is never static, and that's what I really enjoy about the book, is being able to refer to different people, different industries, different insights, and if something's not working, then trying something else. And I think that if any of us ever rest on our laurels, then we're on a slippery slope to doom, because people change, we change, and the industries and everything else around us is a part of the change. So I think the book really helps, is a reference material as well that we'll be able to use and support what I plan to do with some of my management team, and saying, just have a read of this, have a think, where did maybe you sit, where would you like to sit, and give them those options and give those guiding pathways. So thank you for all your efforts. It is a huge piece of work, as noted. It's no small thing to write a book, but to want to talk to so many people, and I'm sure that wasn't a short thing. So well done and congratulations.
Thanks so much, Fee. Yeah, it's really great. Debbie Talmore, do you mind introducing yourself and where you are?
Absolutely. So I'm in Virginia, just around the Beltway, so very close to DC. And I work in cybersecurity, have been in cybersecurity for the last 24 years. And I also am launching a company in January. And so I've been very engaged there. But I just want to say, my work in the past has had me in large corporations, as well as in the startup world. And companies like IBM, like Verizon, um, Kratos Defense. And it's interesting that, with any company that has the responsibility to the street, more or less, there is always this sort of let's move forward, let's move forward. And what I love about your book, which I think is excellent, and congratulations to you, because it's an incredible feat that you have created this. It's quite a masterpiece of so many different ideas that are so good for leaders as a reference point. But I also think that the the idea of leadership and the idea of looking back at one's failures, or looking back at things that didn't work so well and doing a postmortem, is particularly a lost art. And but it can be extremely effective. And I find myself digging that one up quite a bit. I love the part of the book that talked about avoiding overthinking and the curse of perfectionism. And I think that that's very relevant for today. I think also that humility and authenticity in leadership is really, really important now. Another thing that I have sort of dusted off and talked about in the book, but use more frequently, particularly in startup mode, is having my own personal board of directors, where I have people like these wonderful folks who have contributed to this book, who hold similar position or are peers, and going to those folks when you get really stumped and say, well, what do you think? And getting an opinion that might be vastly different from yours, but something to incorporate. And so I just think leadership is lifelong learning, and I just think you've done a fabulous job with this book, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Thanks so much, Debbie. That's really great. I appreciate it. We've probably got time for one more. I think I saw Dennis Hogg. Did you just raise your hand there?
Yes, Brian. I'd firstly like to congratulate you and Dean on the book. It's a wonderful effort, and I know a hell of a lot of work went into it. The publishing of the book, as has been previously said, has put paid to the common misconception. To be successful, you have to be more or less brutal or uncaring. And I say this because many of you, like myself, have worked under situations where you've had a leader who is this type of leader. And I've got to say that the most stressful and unsatisfying period of my working life was under such a leader. I wouldn't call him a leader. He was not worthy of the title. Still, I think it had the effect of making me realise that there was another way, and I've tried to follow those principles, the principles that have been outlined in the book. Working with people, listening to their ideas, being sympathetic, encouraging them, all of these things that are outlined in the book. And I think it's a very worthwhile exercise. the rewards that one gets from these following these principles are the achievements that you make and celebrating the achievements with your workers or your peers. So well done to both of you, and I hope it's a great success.
Thank you.
Thanks for those kind wishes, Dennis. Really appreciate it. Actually, we've probably got time for a little bit more, I think, Dean. Could people put their comments or questions in the chat too? We can get to any of those. But while we're doing that, can I dob Chris Stevens? Can I dob you in to say something?
Oh, Brian, and thanks for the opportunity. And again, just to echo the sentiments that have been shared here, that congratulations to you and Dean for such an amazing effort, and I think an enduring contribution to leadership. I think that can't be overstated. And I'm putting my cards on the table. I've known Brian for 20 years, and he's a close friend and one of the most trustworthy and respected persons in my life. So I sort of see the stock of Brian's thinking and writing into the book, and try as best as I can to align myself to many of the principles Brian espouses and has coached me on over the years as well. I want to sort of give a slightly different angle as well. Someone talked about earlier the geopolitical instability and the period that we're in. The company I lead is called Digital Frontier Partners. I'm the CEO and founder, and we specialise in advanced levels of cybersecurity and enterprise artificial intelligence into the core of medium to large businesses. And what I'm seeing is a period of profound change, disruptive change, scary change, exciting change, all in the mix. And unlike things we've seen in the past where patterns could be followed and things adhered to, and we kind of kept the world moderately safe, we're not in that world anymore. And back in November 2022, when the first OpenAI GPT was released, most of you probably know, but the world changed, and it's changing at a faster rate than we've ever seen before. And the impact on businesses, on people, the threats, the opportunities in mix are just simply exponential and growing at an exponential rate beyond that every single day. And it's really hard to read. So why is this important? Well, the thing that keeps us all together and keeps us creating value and living quality lives and helping build a future for others is about people. And the only thing that glues that together is leadership. So we're in a time more than we've ever seen on the planet where the human system, as I call it, is more fundamental than ever before. You know, we get swayed by the idea of cool tech and things like that, but ultimately it's about leadership and creating livelihoods, lifestyles and futures. And I think the writings from Brian and Dean absolutely give us a compass towards aligning to that. And, you know, the human system is one that endears people to alignment and working towards something, whereas the adverse style of leadership creates division and separation and takes us off course to that very quickly. So in a time when the forces of change, which are just happening, need alignment and unification, the book, The Gentle Art of Leadership, is a key instrument to guide us all on that. And from my perspective, I will be promoting that widely to a lot of people, because in all the work we do with companies of all different sizes, governments, non-governments, etc., it's really part of the conversation every time about leadership, not just tech. So Brian and Dean, thanks again. Great book, and look forward to helping many people get mileage out of it.
Thanks so much, Chris. Yeah, that's really great. Just perhaps one last person, David Lloyd, I know you're usually stuck for a word. Would you mind a quick hello?
No, I'm glad to be asked. Thank you, Brian, and lovely to meet everybody. I'll be honest, I haven't read the book yet. It's in my pile for Christmas. I did nervously flick through it to find the bit where I was quoted, though, of course. That was the first thing I did. And you did great justice to what I wanted to say. I was very struck by the fact that what I said was top of mind at the time. There were issues, as I think we all find in our leadership journeys, which were very present for me at that time. And Brian, you'll probably, if I reminded you, I'm sure you'd remember what they were, because you've been a mentor to me on this kind of thing for many years. But I am so encouraged by listening to other people on this call and hearing the word humility come up so often. That is, it's been a bit of I feel I bang on about it too much. I always couple it with curiosity, which I think is massively important, to quietly listen to other people, to see what you didn't realize they were going to bring to your knowledge of a situation, with humility, but curiosity. There's something here I don't understand. I don't know what it is, and possibly you do. It was something I first learned in working in the, I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm CEO of the National Heart Foundation in Australia. I've spent most of my life in the charitable and academic worlds, where the mission is much more important than the organization or the people in it. And so being curious about how the mission should be achieved, and being humble about and curious about the extent of your role in it, and being able to being willing to dial that back if necessary, in the service of the mission. It's something I said, Peter McMullen, I saw you talk earlier. That's something you've done in spades in your own career, I know, and I think that kind of thing is so important. I could run on forever, Brian, but it's top of my pile for Christmas, and when I've read it, I plan to promulgate it widely. Congratulations to you and Dean on a terrific piece of work. You've put thousands of hours into this, so it's a wonderful output.
Really appreciate it, David. I guess you highlighted why Dean and I had the dilemma of who we have to launch the book, and we can't just choose one of it. And so it's been great to have everybody launching it and wishing it well. It's really encouraging.
Brian,
Jerry, you got a comment?
Jerry? Just lest that you were going to wrap up, I'd like to make a final comment, if I could. Brian, I'm Jerry Moriarty. I'm speaking from Melbourne. Have known Brian for a very long time and worked with him. Congratulations to you and Dean. Someone said earlier it was a book that had to be written, or was going to be written. I think the timing is really important for many of the reasons that have been articulated. For me, I almost despair that the role modelling on public media, social media, any form of public media that I watch, for our younger generation, for our grandchildren, really worries me. It is confrontational, it is combative, and that's the model that our children and grandchildren are seeing as presented as the norm, the way in which human beings need to interact to be successful. What you have done through this book is to show that that is absolutely false, and effective social interaction and leadership comes in many styles that is not confrontational and combative. And for me, the mix of real life experience through your interviews, mixed with deep research to support the outcomes of those interviews, I think is very powerful. So thank you, and congratulations to both of you.
Thanks so much, Jerry. And thanks to everybody who's offered their encouragement and support. I really appreciate it. Dean, maybe just in closing, we should just, observing everybody's time, I know you're all busy people, we promised you we'd be 45 minutes, so that's just coming up now. We should point out in the chat, you'll see links. Maybe Ruth could even repeat the links to places where you can buy the book. So on Amazon and on our respective, Dean and my respective websites. We should mention, Dean, there's a special offer. Do you want to cover that?
Oh yeah, I'm the salesperson. Yeah. So, look, in talking with Sylvie, who was helped us publish the book in Amazon, who by the way are not that easy to deal with. But that aside, we've got a special on for a week, a launch for US 99 cents, the Kindle version. So for the next week, it should be on Amazon at US 99 cents, which is about $1.50 or something here in Australia. So we really want to encourage everyone to get a copy of the book. So that'll hold for a week. The hard copy, we can't really reduce that because there's obviously printing costs and everything else involved in that. What we can do is, if you want an autograph copy, go to either Brian or myself's website, and that way we get it direct and we can autograph a copy and get it out to you. But if you go via Amazon, Kindle version 99 cents US or $1.50 in Australia, and the hard copy is around $40, I think, on Amazon. Yeah, we've had a bit of movement with their algorithms, so I haven't checked this morning.
That's great, Dean. And also, if you're interested in buying multiple copies, talk to us about there's some discounts available.
Yeah,
we'll cut a deal. Ruth, you just wanted to add something?
Yes, there are a couple of things on chat, so I don't know whether you have time to address it, or would they like to wait after the call? Because I know that you and Dean are staying on after the call for you to respond.
Yeah, no, look, if people have got burning questions or comments, Dean and I can stay on for a few more minutes.
Sure.
We did promise everyone else that we'd finish at this time, so I'm keen to do that. One last thing before we go. When you exit, it should automatically come up. You wait a second or two with an exit interview survey. We'd love to get your feedback, what you got out of today, what other comments you might have. If you could just take it, it's probably only take you 2 minutes, but we'd love you to give that feedback. Thanks so much on behalf of Dean and myself for being here on the call today. I love Debbie holding up the book. There it is for everybody to see. Oh, well, it's a bit blurry, isn't it? But anyhow. Thanks, Debbie. And thanks everybody for coming. If you want to stay on for a couple more minutes to have a comment, you're welcome. Otherwise, end of the meeting. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So,
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Graham Simpson, I wish I had got to you. You're on mute.
Not anymore.
Graham, lovely to see your face. Now, there's a real author.
Oh, I don't know about that. There's a novelist who tells lies, so makes things up.
They're very popular lies.
But this is such a long overdue book, Brian. It really is. It's just a book that I'm past my time as a leader, but these were messages that probably I and a lot of other people who were leaders at that time needed to hear, and certainly it needs to be heard today.
So good. Thanks, Graham. Yeah, I really appreciate your support. For those who don't know, actually, Graham, why don't you give a plug to your latest book with Anne and when that's coming out?
Well, the latest book the book I'm best known for is a thing called The Rosie Project, which sold a few million copies and did quite well for us. But we're writing a series of books set in mental health services. Anne's a professor, my partner's a professor of psychiatry, and knows everything. And I like to fancy myself as a bit of a storyteller. So we have your favorite TV medical drama in a psych ward in a book is our pitch. And the first one's called The Glass House. The second one's coming out in February. It's been Hachette's best-selling book on their Australian list, the best-selling novel on their Australian list this year. So we're very pleased with the way it's going. But we're also hopeful it will increase understanding in the mental health space, amongst the community.
Yes, so we wish you well with that series, Graham. It's been fabulous. It's got a good reception so far. So good idea for a Christmas present if anyone who's left on the call is still wondering what to get somebody for Christmas.
The Glass House. Thank you very much for the plug, Brian.
The Glass House. And Chris Dowling, great to see you. You're in the book,
Mm.
and kind of you to come on the call today. Just off mute.
Thanks, Brian, and apologies. The joy of the Melbourne Metro network meant the loop train was stuck for 20 minutes this morning, so I had a beautiful trip in. That's why I was just joining at the last minute on my phone. But congratulations on the launch of the book. I think it's fantastic and really well done. I still think that your style is, I guess, reflective of some of the stuff that you found out. A lot of the people, the thing that stood out to me was definitely there's so many different styles of leadership that have come through in the book, but they're all also very much the same in a lot of different ways. And a lot of it I still think comes back to the integrity of how people are dealing with people. But it really came through in it, and I found it fascinating. I think it's a great book and wish you all the success with it.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Lisa Collins, you're still on the line there.
I am. Yes, I've been on my morning walk because it was 6 a.m. when we started, but I was very keen to join the session, and I'm super looking forward, Brian, to reading the book. One of the questions that I actually had was, is there a Goodreads? I really use Goodreads a lot for reading. Is there a Goodreads kind of group, or are there readers on Goodreads who are supporting the book? Because I would love to do that on that platform as well.
Yeah, right. That's a good suggestion. Yeah, short answer is no, not yet. But maybe I should take advice from the master of Graham Simpson and see how you do that.
Yeah, because actually, if you buy the book on Kindle, when you make a highlight, it shows up on your profile as well. So when people highlight parts of the book, it'll automatically be posted to their feed. So
very good.
Yeah, just a great way to share.
That's a great idea. We'll look some more into that.
Yeah,
Do you have any...
I hadn't heard of that. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Graham, have you got
you also had another question, didn't you, on
Yes, I did. I was really curious. Thanks, Ruth. Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
I was really curious to know if there was any moment in your research or the interviews that shifted your perspective on some aspect of leadership.
Yes. Maybe if I go first, Dan, and then you're welcome to add your comments. I guess it was kind of a moment as we got into the interviews, Lisa, that then I had this idea that the gentle art of leadership is something we should talk about, and it's really important. But I guess there's always a question in your mind about, are we really onto something here or not? The more we got into the interviews with people, the more they confirmed, oh yeah, that's the way to go. That's, everyone had some little piece of gold that we hadn't quite looked at it their way before, but when you see it through their lens, you go, oh yeah, that really makes sense. But when we started to add it all up, it was really great confirmation from a group of people that you don't often hear from, but they're the ones who are quietly just getting results, getting great teams to work, to hum along, and people love them and go the extra mile for them. You don't often hear from them. You hear from the ones who are noisy and saying, look at me, it's all about me. And there's many books even written that are sort of autobiographical about some charismatic leader talking about themselves. Does that get to what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dean, anything to add on
that? I had exactly the same thing, and I know we shared that, but I think, despite my intellectual belief and asserting that this is the way to go and trying to practice it, I had the same thing. There's still a sneaking voice back in the back of the brain saying, I wonder whether other people will think this is a bit soft, or really, and then being delighted every time you talk to people that perhaps I've look up to, or they're very successful and effective, and they're saying the same things as what we've been espousing. And so it ended up the same thing of saying, actually, there's a whole lot of people that agree with this and are actually saying it needs to be said. So there was this coalescing of certainty, I think. Yeah.
Does that help, Lisa?
Yes, definitely. Well, I'm really looking forward to reading it and sharing my comments on Goodreads as well and Amazon.
Good on you.
Thank you both.
It's delightful. You phoned in on while you were out walking. That's great.
Oh yeah, well, it was 6 a.m. I'm like, I can do my walk, I can listen in, I can
That's
make
really good.
comments, like multitasking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should emphasise Lisa's ringing from Singapore too. So it's
Yes, yeah. It
imagining.
is almost 7 a.m. here. So
Right. That's
yeah.
appreciate
Thank you.
it.
And muggy.
My pleasure. And yeah, 24/7, right? Hot and muggy.
And Maggie, yes.
Oh.
And Paula McMahon, it's nice to see your smiling face. She's just disappeared. Oh no, she's just left. And Hayden, thank you for coming. Appreciate your friendship, support over so many years. You're still on mute. Just unmute yourself down at the bottom. There we go.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Really wonderful, and so much looking forward to reading the book. I'm thinking about all sorts of people that I can send it to, maybe starting with my sons, but people who've written books of leadership quite different to this one. So really wonderful achievement. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Hayden.
While we're all here, as a fellow author, can I please exhort you all to do what Brian has asked and get a review up on Goodreads or Amazon. Amazon can be a bit tricky, but if you buy the book from Amazon, they'll let you review it. And the 5-star review and a few nice words does wonders.
That's a great contribution.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Graham.
Actually, Brian and Dean, I just thought I would suggest also that this book, I've got 2 adult daughters that are working in very different industries, one in London and one here, and they're struggling with poor leadership in their organisations. And part of that struggle is lack of clear communication, not open to new ideas, undervaluing perhaps their work in the team. And I was explaining to them that a lot of the time leaders get there by osmosis through organisations and not necessarily, not necessarily have really had professional development to get the skills to lead. So my suggestion is that I think this book is so fabulous that team members, non-leaders, should read it so that they actually know what to expect from a good leader, what contributes to being a great leader. So I would suggest that non-leaders read it as well.
That's really a great idea. That's really a good idea, Lisa. I mean, you don't have to have leader in your title to exemplify all the attributes we're talking about. Leaders know. I'm a bit older than most on the call, but going back in the day, Ron Barassi is a famous Aussie rules player, gave a talk to us when we were in the under-13 group. And he said, you might not be a footballer, but you need to look like a footballer. When you run out on the ground on Saturday, you got to have a clean jumper and clean socks and look like a footballer, even if you're not. So you don't have to, I guess the message to me was you don't have to wait till you got the title. Jerome, in previous life, you'd sold a lot of books, so I'm hoping you're going to be able to recommend this book to lots of other people. Can you still hear us?
I think he's left.
Oh, he's left? He's on mute. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
I think we should call to an end unless there's anything else you thought. All good, Dean?
Yeah, that's great, Brian. Yeah, thanks so much to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Graham. Really appreciate your smiley face. Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.